There are about a dozen first-person shooters on the GBA, and I know what you're thinking. First-person shooters on the Game Boy Advance? Yes, the graphics are bad by today's standards, but the last several years have seen a resurgence in older art styles like Octopath Traveler. Lots of games have used this 16-bit-ish sprite art styles, but would they make the game look like the Nintendo 64 or Game Boy Advance game? I doubt it. Imagine if Call of Duty made a game with the GBA artistic style.
Mission failed. We'll get 'em next time.
Okay, so establishing that graphically, they're not the best. But hey, these games came out in the early to mid 2000s on a system that only had two face buttons, a pair of shoulder buttons, and a D-pad. Which brings me to my next point, the controls. All 13 games have similar button layouts. Not that they had much of a choice. There's not really a way to aim up or down on the Y-axis, which makes it seem like these games are downright unplayable. But the opposite is true though. The early first-person shooters in general had the same control scheme. Doom, for example, is a great port on the GBA. It's got the kick-ass music, the awesome weapons, but I guess that's due to the game actually being already a good game, since it's just a port. Others like Serious Sam, well, it's garbage. Sorry if this happens to be your favorite game of all time, but it's just not that good on the GBA. It's not as smooth as Doom, and it feels really sluggish. I do like the environments and the enemies, and it's not a good game. But I think the worst of the lot here, I'm gonna have to give it to Medal of Honor Underground. Even though the menu is one of the cleaner looking ones, it runs bad, and I'm not the pickiest when it comes to frame rates, but it's like a slideshow. I know it's hard to tell when all these games kinda look the same, but it's one of those where the heck am I going kind of games. Backtrack, a port from the PC version, was a unique game. Instead of going from mission or level to the next, you go to the next level by basically going to the next floor, and you have to rescue 110 humans that have been captured, and every floor has a certain number of humans that need to be rescued. You have a variety of weapons and enemies, and the enemies are interesting. There's skeletons, flying eyeballs, and the cool part is that it's one entire walkthrough. You can save at any point and resume whenever you like, and I like the game because you have the same weapons and health and you just keep going, kind of like a survival type of game. And I think it was a good port of the original one. But in terms of original Game Boy Advance first-person shooters, I'd have to give it to Ice 9. It might look the same as the other games, and you might be thinking, it's like choosing between spoiled milk or molded cheese. I'll take both. Ice 9, along with Eeks vs. Server 1 and 2, and 007 Nightfire, and I guess Dark Arena as well, were the most surprising to me. Ice 9 has different environments and weapons, and you have a sniper that you can zoom in and out into the scope. The objects in the background you can destroy included the office spaces like their printers, or the computers, or their computer chairs. Yeah, I have that report on my desk by Monday. 007 was probably the most ambitious game with a variety of different weapons, including a cell phone grappling hook, a laser wristwatch, and my favorite weapon, a credit card with 2% cash back. You take American Express? Most of these games were ambitious, but were they well received? Like I mentioned before, they all got mixed reviews. By mixed reviews, I mean mixed reviews. Backtrack, made by JV Games, got a 40 from IGN. 007 by the same developers, published by EA, got a 6.5 from IGN and a 3.5 out of 5 from Nintendo Power. Duke Nukem got a 81 out of 100 from Metacritic. Serious Sam got a 51 out of 100. Probably the worst rated one was Medal of Honor Underground, receiving a 5.5 out of 10, and even Nintendo Power was harsh with a 2.3 out of 5. Greg Hastings' Paintball. Well, let me tell you about this game. It's the odd one out because you're not shooting enemies or demons or whatnot. You're playing paintball. You can't jump in the game, so it falls into the can't jump category if you want to categorize by that. The graphics are impressive, and it does have a tournament mode, as well as having professionals appearing in the game, as its name suggests. It was released late in the Game Boy Advance's lifespan in 2005, and released on the DS as well. Or what about Dark Arena? Although I think it runs smooth and it's a fun game, the critics basically said it was a Doom clone. Not a bad thing, but when you have Doom 1 and 2 on the system, you're probably going to play those instead. At least it's an original game though. They could have made a Doom Advance or like a new Doom game on the GBA or something. And the other port, Wolfenstein, I remember playing this as a kid, but I never got far into it. When I replayed it, I was thrown back because I had totally forgotten about the main enemies of the games. I blurred them just in case because of YouTube and whatnot, but it rhymes with lotsies. Yes, there was some terrible frame rate games like Serious Sam and Medal of Honor Underground, and you can see the developers. Wait, was I wearing these the whole time? Nostalgia strikes again. While I might be biased because I grew up with the Game Boy Advance in the 2000s, you don't have to be a, what do they call it, a young person? Damn, I just roasted myself. The developers of these games obviously had talent and skills to be able to make these games on the Game Boy Advance. Some went on to create giant popular games, others not so much. Like JV Games, the developer of 007 and Backtrack, well, they made a game for the Atari Jaguar in 2023. The developers of Serious Sam Advance went on to make Silent Hill games and Assassin's Creed Chronicles. So it's good to see that the mixed reviews on the Game Boy Advance didn't affect their development going forward. Actually, it kind of reminds me of my own work, how I have improved over the years. Here's a drawing when I was like about 6. Here's one now. Impressive for their time on a system that wasn't known for these kind of games. They might be lost in time, but for me, I'll always have them in my memory. Especially that last level of 007. I mean, you're in space wearing a spacesuit, shooting lasers at rockets that are about to take off, and you gotta defeat the final boss. Since there's only 13 games, you can technically play the entire first-person shooter library on the Game Boy Advance. As for me, I played them all because I'm preparing to be in an episode of Jeopardy. Yeah, I'll take a video game for 1,000, please. Ah, damn it.